Imagine you're sitting in mission control, tracking a rocket that's just tearing through the atmosphere. Through your telemetry data, you know its exact acceleration at every single millisecond. But suddenly, there's a problem. You don't actually need the acceleration, you need to know its exact altitude, right now. So how do you work backward to find the position when literally all you have is the rate of change?
See, in rectilinear motion, everything is connected through derivatives. The derivative of position gives you velocity, and the derivative of velocity gives you acceleration. But to move backward, from acceleration back to velocity and then all the way back to position, requires a completely different, incredibly powerful mathematical tool. You have to figure out how to completely reverse the derivative.
By the end of this explainer, you're going to understand the concept of the antiderivative, the mathematical formula behind it, and exactly how to apply it to solve real-world problems. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Math Undo Button.
I really want you to think of antiderivatives as the ultimate Control+Z or undo button for calculus. We spent so much time learning how to break functions down, right? Well, now we're going to learn how to build them back up. Think of it a bit like the classic game show Jeopardy! In standard differentiation, you're given the question, and you just have to find the answer. So if I give you the function x squared, use the power rule, drop the 2 down, and you tell me the derivative is 2x. Easy. But anti-differentiation forces you to work completely in reverse. It gives you the answer and forces you to hunt down the original question. If I hand you the function 2x, you have to ask yourself, wait, what function did someone take the derivative of to get here? And by thinking backward, you naturally arrive right back at x squared.
So let's do a really quick check, just to make sure our brains are wired for this reverse thinking. What is the antiderivative of cosine x? Take a second. Well, if you remember your basic derivative rules, you know that the derivative of sine x gives you cosine x. Therefore, working backward, the antiderivative of cosine x absolutely has to be sine x.
Section 2. Unlocking the plus c.
Now that we've got the basic intuitive idea down, let's tackle a very common student confusion that trips people up all the time. As a teacher, I hear this constantly. Wait, why do we always have to add a plus c at the end of our answers? It feels like this annoying, totally arbitrary extra step that you just lose points for if you forget it on a test. But it's actually not arbitrary at all. The reason lies in exactly how constants behave when we take a derivative.
Look at how the math visually proves the need for this plus c. We already know the derivative of x squared is 2x. But what's the derivative of x squared plus 5? Well, it's also 2x. What about the derivative of x squared minus the square root of 2? Still 2x. Because the derivative of any constant number is simply 0, that information gets completely erased during differentiation. Poof, gone. So, when we hit the undo button on 2x, we don't actually know which specific original function we started with. We add plus c to represent that entire infinite family of possible functions.
Section 3. Indefinite integral notation. Let's transition from that intuitive idea to the formal mathematical notation we use to actually write this out on paper. This is the indefinite integral. That beautiful elongated s is the integral sign. The function inside, lowercase f of x, is called the integrand. And that little dx at the end, do not ignore it, it's incredibly important. It tells us our variable of integration. Whenever you see this exact expression, treat it as a command. It's explicitly asking you for the most general form of the antiderivative, which we write as capital F of x plus c.
Section 4. Power Rule for Integrals.
Now, intuition and guessing work totally fine for simple functions, but to actually calculate these consistently, we need a rock-solid formula. Which brings us to the power rule for integrals. And this brilliantly illustrates the pure logic of the undo process. Just think about taking a derivative. You multiply by the exponent, and then you subtract 1 from the exponent, right? To reverse that, you have to do the exact opposite operations in the exact reverse order. So for the integral, as long as your exponent n is not -1, you simply add 1 to the exponent first and then divide by that new number. And of course, never ever forget your plus c.
Let's make this a bit more concrete and walk through an example step by step. Suppose we need to integrate the polynomial 5x cubed minus 7x squared. Our properties of integrals tell us that we can safely separate sums and differences, essentially treating them as individual mini-problems. So we look at 5x cubed. Add 1 to the exponent, 3 to get 4, and divide by 4. That gives us 5/4 x to the 4th. Then we just do the exact same thing for 7x squared. Add 1 to the 2 to get 3, and divide by 3. That gives us minus 7/3 x cubed. Put it all together, slap our constant c at the very end, and boom, we have our general antiderivative.
But wait, hold on. This is absolutely crucial. Before we move on, you have to watch out for this incredibly common trap. It is so tempting to apply the rule we just learned to everything you see. Yes, you can neatly split sums and differences, but you absolutely cannot just multiply the integrals of two separate functions together. I'll say it again. The product of antiderivatives is not the antiderivative of a product. If you see two functions multiplying together inside an integral, you cannot just integrate them separately. We're going to need entirely different techniques for that later on.
Section 5. Solving initial value problems.
Okay, now let's connect this abstract math back to real life. We've talked a whole lot about that mysterious constant c, representing an infinite family of functions. But what if we need just one, single, specific function? This is where initial value problems step in. An initial value problem is all about finding a unique function that satisfies a differential equation and a given initial condition. Think back to our rocket from the beginning. If the integral gives us a general formula for position with an unknown plus c, an initial condition is like knowing the exact starting altitude of our rocket at launch. It gives us that missing piece of the puzzle to actually calculate the exact true value of c.
Let's look at how elegant this actually is in practice. Suppose our differential equation is dy over dx equals 6x squared. Step 1, we hit the undo button and integrate. Using our power rule, adding 1 to the exponent and dividing, we get our general solution. Y equals 2x cubed plus c. Now, step 2, we apply our initial condition. Let's say we are given that when x is 1, y is exactly 5. We take those specific numbers and plug them directly into our general equation. So 2 times 1 cubed plus c must equal 5.
Doing the simple algebra here, 2 times 1 is 2. Subtract 2 from 5, and we find that our constant c equals exactly 3. Now, we just replace the c in our general equation with this exact number. This gives us our final, specific solution, y equals 2x cubed plus 3. We successfully eliminated the unknown variable and found the precise exact path of our mathematical rocket. So the crucial point here is that calculus gives us the tools to move fluidly in both directions. Before we finish up, let's quickly summarize our key takeaways from this explainer. First, antiderivatives completely reverse differentiation. They literally are the undo button for rates of change. Second, always include that plus c when dealing with indefinite integrals. It represents the general family of all possible original functions. And finally, when you're given an initial condition, you can plug those specific values in to solve for the exact value of c and find one unique function for your real-world problems.
Now, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. We've seen how antiderivatives can work backward through time to find position from acceleration. But how could this exact same mechanical process, adding 1 to an exponent and dividing, somehow find the physical geometric area trapped under a squiggly curve on a graph? I know, it sounds totally impossible, but this incredible undo button is really just the beginning.